State Senator Becca Rausch discussed last week on this program her reasoning for co-sponsoring a bill to implement comprehensive voting by mail for all Massachusetts statewide elections this year. That would be the September 1st state primary and the state general election and presidential election on November 3rd. I spoke to Senator Rausch on Thursday about the support the bill has from Massachusetts Congressman Joseph Kennedy. We're joined once again this week by Senator Becca Rausch. I picked up the newspaper a day or two after we last chatted. You, of course, filed legislation to set up vote by mail balloting this fall. Not only do you feel that way, but Congressman Joe Kennedy, who's running for the U.S. Senate, feels the exact same way. You're in some good company.
Yeah, great company. Basically, every member of our congressional delegation in both the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate that has been speaking about vote by mail has been advocating for getting ballots into the hands of every voter and doing it as efficiently and effectively as possible. So we have the provisions for automatic vote by mail in the 2020 Vote by Mail Act that I crafted and filed last week. And I'm really excited about the energy behind the bill that we've seen come out in frankly, a relatively short amount of time.
Explain to me how that works, because November is also a presidential election. Do individual states have the right to set up vote by mail when other states don't, or does it have to be the same across the nation?
Yeah, isn't that so interesting? States are responsible for administering elections. It's completely within the state purview to figure out how to make elections work, even when there are federal races on the ballot, presidential or otherwise. And actually, in every even-numbered year, we have some federal office on the ballot, right? Because our congresspeople are up for re-election every 2 years, just like every member of the state house. So we always have congressional races on the ballot, but the management of elections and the administration of elections is left to the states. So this is absolutely within our purview, and we're seeing more and more support come out every day for universal automatic vote by mail to the greatest extent possible in the Commonwealth.
How does it differ from absentee balloting?
Well, they are quite similar, but the difference is really in our Constitution. Our Constitution sets out very specific reasons for absentee voting that really relate to a voter being absent. And so that might be, for example, if you're out of state at that moment of the election. So the way that my 2020 vote by mail bill works is through the early voting provisions, expanding early voting for both the primary and the general, and doing it through mail. So it's sort of getting a little wonky, but it's an important distinction.
What does it mean as far as election night's concerned? Will we not know who the winner is until the next day?
Well, for the primary, you'll know. All of the primary ballots under my bill will be due back to the local clerks, right, town and city clerks, on election day. So that's September 1st for the primary. And frankly, we had to do it that way because our timing is so tight between the primary and the general. Our primary election in Massachusetts is dead last in the nation for all the states that hold traditional primaries. Certainly the original date, September 15th, was dead last in the country. So we got to get those counted. We got to get them, we got to get them in. And that, is also important for any recount that might be happening, and in order to print the general election ballots on time and get those distributed. For the general election, if it's close, and people wait until the end to send in their ballots, it's possible that we might be waiting a couple of extra days to find out the final counts. General election ballots under my bill would be required to be postmarked by election day and received 5 days thereafter.
Well, I'm certainly glad I'm not hosting that election night coverage, that's for sure. Big news this week on the state level. Wasn't in the legislature, it was the governor announcing, and I personally think it was a smart move. School is done for the year, at least as far as kids coming to school.
Right. School is now in distance learning for the year. It is really big news, and all early education daycare facilities are closed through the end of June. This is a huge shift, seismic for all of us who are parents of children in school in primary grades and also in the early education sphere. As a parent of kids in both of those spheres, I have one in kindergarten and one in daycare, in preschool. That's it's tough, and it's particularly difficult for all of us as parents to feel a little bit in limbo, because the business closure date is still March, May 4th. Um, but our kids are not physically going back to school this year, so that's a challenging thing for people to hold. I'm certainly hearing from constituents about it as well. I agree, absolutely, it was the right call, but there are some uh, impacts from that haven't quite been figured out yet, or at least haven't been announced yet. So I too, like all other parents in the Commonwealth right now, I'm sort of waiting to see what develops on that front. But I have been advocating very strongly, on behalf of our early educators and our preschools. Um, this decision, if we as a state, and frankly partnering with our colleagues in the federal delegation, don't do something to shore up our early education centers, this will decimate that industry. And if we are learning anything, one of the things we are learning from this shutdown period is that childcare is absolutely critical. Parents right now are in a very difficult spot, right? Especially people who are lucky enough to still be working, trying to work from home, especially if both parents are working. If you have a two-parent home or a single-family home and all the parents are working, and the kids still need to be supervised and fed and taught, it's nearly impossible to make it all work.
And
Um,
you bring up a very good point because eventually the Massachusetts economy will open. It will open in stages,
mhm.
and without childcare opening, you're not going to be able to have grandma and grandpa watch your child because you put them at risk.
Right, exactly. In fact, I just had that conversation with my mother this morning, and they don't live in the Boston area. They said, "We'll take the kids for a couple of weeks." And I said, "No, for all we know, we could be carrying something. We haven't had nearly sufficient testing, even still, and be totally asymptomatic and not none of us have been sick, so none of us have been tested. But I suppose it's possible, right? I mean, we still don't have a handle on this virus. We don't know really how it works or how it spreads, and why some people don't show any symptoms and why some people die from it. Right. So there are a number of complicating factors here. Plus, especially in a place like Massachusetts, where we have so many college students come in from all across the country and internationally, a lot of those people have since become early educators, but have been financially unable to stay physically in the Commonwealth since the shutdown. So even if the early education centers can reopen, physically reopen on a certain date, the staff won't be here because they have literally left. And you can't, we still have ratios, right? I mean, we have ratios that are required for early education, for daycare, childcare, for a reason. They're important for safety, and also for development. And if we don't have the staff, then it doesn't matter if they can unlock the building because the kids won't be able to go, which means the parents aren't going to work. So we have a series of very serious problems here. And in order for our early ed centers to be able to open back up, we're going to need to do something to shore them up in the interim.
I know the fact that it's now illegal to evict a tenant for being behind on their rate was their rent, excuse me, was so important to you.
It what rent and mortgage, right?
Mm.
This is uh, we hear from, honestly, I've lost count of how many constituents have lost their incomes, who are at risk of losing their home, whether it's a rent payment or a mortgage payment. Right, people who are now dealing with food insecurity, who have never dealt with this before. Hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of people whose unemployment claims haven't been fully processed yet. It's just, people are in real dire straits. And getting that moratorium on evictions and mortgage foreclosures was a huge step forward for our residents of the Commonwealth who are really, really hurting right now. That bill is actually leading the nation. It's a great effort. That and also making sure that we don't have any shutoffs of utilities, which was partly done through a bill that I, as the municipalities committee chair on the Senate side, shepherded through, and partly done on the administration side through the Department of Public Utilities.
And then finally, if someone wants to get a hold of you or a member of your staff, what's the best way to do so?
As always, you can email me at becca.rausch@masenate.gov, and my staff and I will address your email as soon as we possibly can. You can also call our office, 617-722-1555. We check the email and also voicemails several times every day. I will share with you that our email volume is massive. I will tell you, I personally spend many hours until the wee hours of the morning this one night this week, just plowing through emails, and I still have over 1,000 messages in my inbox. So and they just keep coming, and frankly, that's indicative of the critical work that we are doing and that we need to continue to do.
Well, Senator, once again, thank you for joining us. We'll see you again next week.
I look forward to it, Peter. Be well.